Hey buddies, Midstone here, coming after another Borderlands 3 video. Today we're going to be doing another Iron Cub build, but today the Iron Cub actually does damage. On November 19th, there was a hot patch that recently came out. Let me highlight it here for you guys right here. Basically, Iron Cub wasn't getting Mayhem. And notice how they said occasionally, as if we wouldn't notice. Occasionally meant all the time. Okay, so basically Iron Cub has now have Mayhem scaling, and that made his damage from absolutely nothing, as you guys saw in my last video, to absolutely broken. Does like 39 million per shot with the setup I'm using, and since we're using a chain lightning railgun, that 39 million chains to a bunch of enemies, and it just does an entire board wipe. It does boss wipes, it does everything you can think of. It's awesome. We killed Captain Tron in just 2 Iron Cub shots. It's absolutely crazy. Just like last build, we're using a flare to boost Iron Cub's damage to maximum amount, but today we're not actually using the same gear. We made a few changes. Now we're using the elemental projector victory rush to boost our damage whenever we get a dot on us, which is very often in the game, as you guys know. But in case we can't get a dot on us, we have a sellout. If you ever want to boost your damage yourself, you can do that. And we're also running a new shield called Besker. This shield is just really good at keeping you alive, so we just have that so we never go down. We kept the recurring hex because we want to get as many dots on the enemies as possible for running on fumes, and these are the points we have on our flare here. Before we talk about the gear, let's talk about the skill tree itself. We made a few changes. Since we're focusing on Iron Cub's damage itself, we put a lot of points into Iron Bear damage, so we have 5 points into really big guns. We go all the way down into Capstone on the purple tree. This tree we use Fire and Skag Den because obviously it gives us tons of bonus splash damage. Tor Cross Promotion for more damage on that. Johnny Brass, which affects Iron Cub's damage, experimental munitions, and Specialist Bear. Now, there's a couple of things on the skill tree that doesn't affect Iron Cub's damage, which is really weird because it would affect Iron Bear when you're piloting him. Points that don't actually affect Iron Cub's damage itself is Scorching RPMs, Desperate Measures, Stainless Steel Bear, which is really disappointing. But Stainless Steel Bear does give us the extra feel still, and I'm pretty sure that's it. I'm sure there's some certain things that we have missed on that, but those are the points that don't give any damage to Iron Cub, so stay clear of that. That's why the skill tree looks so weird. Instead of using Efficiency Engine to boost Moze damage, we're actually switching over to My Little Friend, which gives Iron Bear a Vladoff rifle that does 350k per shot, and it has quite the range on it. Sometimes Iron Cub will be in the back and shooting the Vladoff assault rifle instead of using his railgun, which is non-preferable because you want him to be shooting the railgun as much as possible because that's where the most of the damage lies from. So sometimes Iron Cub will get stuck in the background shooting his Vladoff assault rifle, but it doesn't happen too often. Keep in mind the Iron Cub AI is really crappy. He does a lot of finicking stuff, and it takes a while for him to target the actual enemy if he has to make a full 180. He has like tank controls with his aiming, so be patient with him. But he does crazy amounts of damage, so it's a big trade-off on that, so it's totally fine. The weapon of choice that we're using on Iron Cub is this one. This is a railgun that allows us to chain lightning to lots of enemies. It does really good at bossing and mobbing. The reason why we're using this particular one is because railguns have been known to deal the most amount of damage for Iron Cub, and this has still the best DPS on Iron Cub and Iron Bear, so we're just using that. And because we're using primarily railguns, we are focusing 100% on railguns here. We're using Anointment while Iron Bear is active. Railgun damage is increased by 100%. This is an absolutely huge increase to boost Iron Cub's damage. We have it on all of the weapons that we can. Our sellout cannot have it, obviously, because sellout cannot spawn with any anointments. We're using a plasma coil because it's like one of the most OP weapons in the game right now. We're using a Cutsman because it's a pretty good weapon as well, and a Scourge because why not use a rocket launcher? Scourge is always amazing at killing any enemy that you see. It's really overkill for most mobbing situations, so you kind of want to just use it if you're desperate and you're fighting for your life or you're bossing. But the plasma coil is pretty much does everything in this build. I see no reason not to just constantly use plasma coil. It does crazy amounts of damage. It can boss, it can mob. We're using the Mayhem modifier, Big Kick Energy, which would increase the recoil and weapon spread, but the coil just doesn't seem affected by it. It just goes in a straight line no matter what, so that's very cool. And since we use Big Kick Energy, we're also increasing our gun damage by 25%, so we're still able to deal pretty good damage with this build. I haven't had any problems dealing any damage with Moze, although we're not using Short Fuse. You could probably modify this build to use Short Fuse to try to maximize both of them. This build does it well enough where I didn't have any problems killing anything with Moze. or Iron Cub, so you kind of have it all on this build. Now keep in mind, for those of you who didn't watch my last video, Flare increases the damage of Iron Cub and Moze at the same time, so we're getting 100% more damage when we first spawn Iron Cub, and since we're running on fumes, which is the end cap of the purple tree, this allows our fuel not to be consumed for a few moments, which allows us to stay at a healthy amount of fuel. Now in this particular build we're using railguns, as said before, but if you want other great weapons to use with Iron Cub, is people like to use active tracking. I personally don't feel like active tracking is that great of a weapon for Iron Cub. His tracking is not very good. Sometimes he'll just shoot up into the air, and then it'll take a few seconds for the rockets to actually home down. If you're patient with it, it's decent. Make sure if you're using any of these other weapons, you're using the appropriate anointment to increase the 100% damage, because there is a variant on this particular anointment. Right now ours is, while Iron Bear is active, railgun damage is increased. Now there's one for miniguns, there's one for salamander, there's one for grenade launcher, rocket launcher. There's one for every single one, so make sure to use the appropriate anointments whenever you switch to a different weapon. Hammer down protocol does crazy amounts of damage, but it doesn't fire really quickly. If you're looking to just kill something immediately, that's probably your go-to one-shot bossing weapon. Minigun is very disappointing, so don't bother using any miniguns. Although it seems like a good choice for Iron Cub since he's always on the move, it's not very good. Keep in mind, with any splash damage weapon that you're using with Moze, Iron Cub has a chance on killing himself very easily. It doesn't happen very often with the railgun setup, but it can happen with any splash damage. So sometimes you'll be fighting and just Iron Cub will just poof, and you're like swimming up creek without a paddle, and it's just really terrible situation you get yourself into. But we have a lot of things that increase cooldown rates, so don't worry too much about that. And grenade launchers are pretty good as well. Strat for this build is kind of just summon Iron Cub and then just go ham on anything you want. Go firing at any enemy you see. There's not much thinking to do with this build. Try to keep hexes out on the board, because that will increase your status effect chance, and applying status effects allows Iron Cub's fuel to stay at a healthy amount, so you want to keep that. Now we do have the anointment while Iron Bear is active. Taking damage has a 20% chance to spawn a grenade. This activates if you take damage or if Iron Cub take damage. Keep in mind that the grenade will always spawn out of Moze, so never look directly down. So we'll have hexes flying out of us every once in a while. So pretty much just summon him and then just go ham on any enemy you see. Iron Cub will do a great job at covering any area you want. You could follow him around if you want. You could just let him do whatever and go off on your own. He'll try to follow you, but he'll kind of just keep targeting whoever he sees personally and keeps killing them. It's pretty independent, so you don't have to worry too much about him. There isn't really much thought with this build, so just summon him and then just go on a frenzy. Since we don't have max points in the stainless steel bear, we'll often see that his fuel will get consumed pretty quickly when he shoots his weapon very often, but we have lots of stuff in the purple tree to keep his fuel healthy, and deadlines, which will return our fuel with diminishing returns on every single kill. When I was doing the Christina Slaughter, I was able to do 4 entire rounds without Iron Cub going down a single time. You know, I don't personally have any problems with fuel on this build, and even if he was go down, we have action skill and increase Iron Bear's cooldown rate, so we don't have to worry about him being off cooldown for too long. Now I want to give you guys some tips with this build that I wanted to try out when I first thought about this build, but there's certain anointments that don't actually work with this build that you would think would work because it works on everything else in the game. Now, Iron Cub does not get affected by anointments from URAD. URAD is when you're below 50% health, you get the bonus radiation damage. Iron Cub does not benefit from that. That's really lame. Originally, when I wanted to make this build, I wanted to make it a URAD build because I thought that would give us the most amount of damage, but we can't do that with Iron Cub, so oh well. And Iron Cub does not benefit from 300% damage over 90% health, so don't bother doing that as well. You pretty much just want to keep your specific weapon bonus while Iron Bear is active anointment on the weapon you're using. Since we're trying to focus on Iron Cub's damage entirely, we want to make sure we have that anointment. These anointments do not go away when you swap, so you can swap and then swap back and you'll still be able to have the anointment active. For those who didn't get a good look, here's my action skill tree again. We go all the way down in purple. We go to tier 2 in blue. We go to mid capstone on red. And then we go all the way down to Specialist Bear for green, because you wouldn't think it would, but Specialist Bear actually affects Iron Cub. Here's my Mayhem modifiers as again, we use Big Kick Energy, Floor's Lava, Laser Flare, and Postmortem. You could always do this build on Mayhem 11 like any other build, and you don't have to worry about the Mayhem modifiers, but I personally think these are beneficial. And then here's our Guardian ranks. If you want to check out on my other builds, there is an Iron Cub build that focuses on Moze being the star, and Iron Cub is kind of just lingers in the background, debuffing enemies. That build's really fun if you want to focus on Moze damage herself. There'll be a link up above for that. If you want to check out Zane's new skill tree, I made a build that is all focuses on his cannon and keeping his charges at max. It's all about crits, so of course we're using Unforgiven. We were able to one-shot Grave Ward with that build very easily. We have a flak build that specializes in Peregrine and Light Speed Grenade. Solo any content you want without using any bullets. We personally beat the Maliwan and Guardian Takedown without firing a single bullet with that build. It's very awesome. If you guys want to check out any other Moze builds, I have a Vindicator Gas Call Moze build that is all about just throwing a bunch of grenades. We use the Minesweeper class mod in that build to just increase their damage to crazy amounts with the natural crits that the skulls can do. We have a Zane build that's able to one-shot anything, uses the Master Crossbow and pulled board to 100%, dealing the most amount of damage with each shot. We're able to one-shot pretty much anything on Mayhem 10 with that build. It's very fun. If you guys are interested in trying this build out, I'll have a save file down below, like always, in the comments and subscription. That's all I have for today. I hope you guys like, comment, subscribe, and I hope you all have a great day. Bye-bye now.
And the last shall be first to immerse in a pass out heat, facing him up with a moxie melt till he woke up drowning in tchotchke hell. War in a cave with a torch on a wall, then a window arrangement of porcelain dolls.